So let me go ahead and kind of run through this bill in the entirety. What we have before the Senate is a supplemental budget. The supplemental budget, for those watching at home, is basically a repair budget for the current fiscal year, dealing with unintended consequences that may have occurred since we left last spring, and also any items that appeared to be brand new, like this virus issue that's facing the state. So let me kind of give everybody a rundown. It's a significant sum of money. So all funds, today we're talking about $612,447,000. That's all funds. $359,864,000, that's rounded off, $360 million is unrestricted general funds. So there's some federal. But on dealing with Medicaid in the entirety, to respond to the challenges we had in Medicaid from when we enacted last year's budget through the end of this fiscal year, we were expecting, even though we sustained $40 or $50 million in reductions, we were hit with added expenditures. So that item needed to be increased, Medicaid, for this current fiscal year, $142,273,600. Federal is $160,400,000. And again, that's because the FY20 cut, unfortunately, wasn't achievable. It adds $14 million in unrestricted general funds and $17 million in federal to the governor's request to ensure the Medicare continuity, with the additional impact that we're looking at from the virus between this spring. So part of this appropriation was to repair last year's budget shortfalls, and then a little bit of this, even though it's a big number, 14 million, in the entirety, it's a smaller portion of it, to deal with the virus. We've also had, last year, unfortunately, across the state, we had significant fire damage in the interior. We had power lines lost. We had danger to a lot of our communities. And we had to respond to that fire, multiple fires. That cost an additional $110,576,100 to cover the suppression costs. So we had, unfortunately, a year where we had significant dry spell across the state. In Southeast, we had a drought. In the interior, you had out of control wildfires. Due to the severity of the economic contraction that the state is facing, we added $30 million to the Community Assistance Program. This makes the program whole, 30 million instead of 20, so it's basically a 10 million repair. Allows the communities to manage their own expenditures a little bit on the upcoming economic impact that they're facing. Well, currently, it's not upcoming, it's immediate. We're already facing substantial layoffs in our communities. So we're trying to get some assistance to the communities as soon as we possibly can. We added $1 million to the Pioneer Home in this bill to make sure that the Pioneer Home is operational and in good standing, and they also have the finances available to protect their residents. We added $150,000 to respond to the difficulty in Western Alaska dealing with the real ID requirement at the federal level. And that grant is going to go to the Alaska Municipal League to be implemented to rural Alaska. We added $520,000 to the Cold Climate Housing Research Center. It's a significant research center in the state of Alaska, and there was concern that that would be severely impacted with last year's budget. Again, on the permanent fund, we did not add any addition to the corpus from the earnings reserve, but we did change the language to match last year's implemented appropriation of $4.9 billion. 4 of it was for future inflation proofing, so we changed that language from 8 years in the budget we passed last year to 4 years to better match the life expectancy of the $4 billion for inflation proofing. With what's going on in the markets, we might end up with 5 years, but we used 4. We added $8.6 million for older and disabled Alaskans under the Alaska Public Assistance Program. This restored a governor's veto. The Alaska Marine Highway, $7.1 million for more service until June 30th. Almost had to say some service, but more service because we do have a boat running. Troopers, state troopers. We all know the value the troopers have to keeping our families safe. $6.7 million directly to the detachment statewide, includes $700,000 for aircraft modernization. $6 million for increased capacity of the Alaska Psychiatric Institute. $6 million increase there. We also last year had to deal with an earthquake. One of the old adage, you know, when it rains it pours, Madam President. Well, we're kind of getting wet here. The earthquake response, $3 million to the rail belt communities. We have also added in the last couple of days, and we would have had this bill on the floor a couple of days ago, Madam President, but the virus issue facing Alaska and the world is changing so rapidly, it was difficult. Took a little time to put together, but there's an immediate need dealing with this COVID-19 virus, and I mean immediate. $15 million unrestricted general funds to the Division of Public Health. This will target medical and protective equipment and supplies, testing for COVID-19, transportation for those that need to be medevaced, military lifted, or what have you, housing assistance for quarantine, in case the state has to step in with housing in a quarantine scenario, which is highly likely, support for the state's epidemiology lab. I always mispronounce that a little bit, a finance guy, not a doctor. So we got some money for the lab, and then some money in there for communications with the public. Now, we did not list those items individually. We made the appropriation of $15 million without allocations. These are targeted allocations, giving the administration flexibility with the $15 million to respond heavier in one of those areas or lighter in another, depending on the circumstances that prevail at the time. We took $8.5 million to municipalities for response of mitigation. $4.5 million of that $8.5 was from the Ocean Ranger account. Again, these monies need to be spent basically for the cruise ship passengers. So this is targeted, think of it as the cruise ship docks, immediate physical location of where the gangplank ends. And then $4 million from the CVP tax account to comprise the $8.5 million. Again, we left the open-ended federal receipt authority for Medicaid. Reason being, we don't know how bad this is going to hit us. We know it's going to be bad, and we don't want to put the administration in a spot where they have to wait 30 days to receive federal funds if we're not in session, or have them have the need, or for us to have the need to call legislative budget and audit together in the interim. For those watching at home, we have a committee, joint committee with the House and the Senate that could bless receipt of federal funds. So we want to make sure that there's ample authority given to respond to this emergency. And to pay the bill. The fiddler always comes home, unfortunately, and needs to be paid. We had, when we left here, around $250 million in excess appropriation authority, which we call headroom. from the constitutional budget reserve. We used roughly about $4 billion of it last week or so, a couple weeks, when we did the mental health budget, dealing with the mental health's ability to respond to the virus issue also. So that number was somewhere down around $246 million. So the remaining funds have to come from someplace. We don't have a printing press in the basement. So we have to have a draw on the Constitutional Budget Reserve, which is our savings account. And that takes a 3/4 vote. And then we have the, and it says contingent on the reverse sweep, reinstating all the counts that get zeroed out at the end of the fiscal year, putting their cash balance back where they were on the last night, enabling those departments to continue to operate and not give them a zero cash balance. That would move, that would impact the future budget about $650 million in immediate deficit of our litany of agencies, and it's unimaginable financial catastrophe, quite frankly. So they're contingent on each other. So all said and done, Madam Chairman, this is unfortunately a very expensive supplemental budget, far in excess of anything we imagined a year ago. But I don't think anybody in the budgetary process or on the floor of the Senate today ever imagined such a thing as a COVID-19 virus hitting the world, the United States, and now affecting our citizens in Fairbanks, Anchorage, Ketchikan, and growing daily, potentially exponentially, according to our advisors, medical advisors. So we need to take swift and effective action to ensure that the administration and the governor has ample financial tools at his disposal to respond to this immediately. Every day that goes by, when you're dealing with exponential factors, the line gets straighter and straighter, or increases and increases to straight up. So this is very time sensitive, Madam President. I do apologize, being the budget chairman, to bring such a large supplemental budget to the floor of the Senate, but I have no choice. We have to deal with this, and over the next several days, we'll continue to deal with this. With that, Madam Chairman, I would appreciate consideration of this supplemental budget from all areas of the state. We're all exposed to COVID-19, regardless if you're out at Attu Island or you're down at Dixon Entrance. All Alaskans are exposed, and we need to respond and protect our citizens. It's unfortunate that we have to have such large supplemental budgets in such tight fiscal times, but I urge all the senators to consider the significance of the issues we face. We all work together. We can get this, minimize the impact on our citizens, and get this behind us and get back to getting the keel under the fiscal boat. Thank you.
Shall House Bill 234 pass the Senate? Senators may proceed to vote. Has any senator failed to vote? Will the Secretary lock the roll? Do any senators wish to change their vote? The Secretary will record and tally the vote.
16 yeas, 0 nays.
And so on a vote of 16 yeas and 0 nays, House Bill 234 has passed the Senate.